Good afternoon, everybody. How are you guys doing? Great. Hey, welcome. It's just an honor to be here. My name is Clarence Anthony. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of the National League of Cities. And the Smart City Atlanta Expo is a huge success, and we'd like to thank Hardie for inviting us as elected officials throughout America. You're about to experience knowledge, creativity, and commitment by the voices and the language and exactly the experiences that these mayors in their cities have exemplified when it comes to smart cities, when it comes to inclusivity, and when it comes to really putting their heart into their work to make sure that everyone that lives in their community feels as if they fit. So the whole theme of this week is about redefining smart. It's about how cities are taking bold actions to make sure that their communities are improved and the lives of the people that live in those communities are improved. And today I'm joined by a group of mayors who really are defining or redefining smart cities. And one thing I know, when you meet a mayor, no matter where they are globally or in the States, they think they are the smartest city in the world. So let's start with that as a frame. So today, our panel, we have Mayor Eugene Grant, Mayor of Seat Pleasant, Maryland. Then we have Mayor Kirk Caldwell.
Hey guys, how's it?
Mayor of City of Honolulu, who I talked him into wearing a tie today. We have Mayor Hardie Davis, Jr., Mayor of City of Augusta, Georgia, President of the African American Mayors Association. And we have next to me, the President of the great National League of Cities, Mayor Freeman-Wilson, yes. The Mayor of Gary, Indiana. Let's give them a hand. So I intentionally not spent time on introducing all of their bio because I want them to say a little bit about what they're doing in this question that I'm about to ask. And it's an easy opener. Mayor Freeman-Wilson, when you think of a smart community, and I use the word intentionally, not cities, not towns, not villages, smart community, how do you define that, and what comes to mind?
Well, first and foremost, Clarence, I want to thank Hardie and all of the organizers for the opportunity to join you and this august group of mayors to talk about smart cities. When I think of smart cities, I really think about how does the work that we do around technology, how does the work that we do around really equipping our city for the future resonate with residents. A city is only smart if residents think it's smart. So you may have the latest technology. I never will forget when we rolled out our 311 app at a community meeting. And I was excited about it. I had downloaded it on my iPhone. And then I asked the residents in the 4th District in Gary, I said, pull out your phone. And half of them had flip phones. And I froze in my, because I was like, okay, we don't have a 311 app for a flip phone. And so we were able to quickly pivot and say, for those of you who have smartphones or want to download it on your computer at home and use the website on the city's website. And for those of you who don't, you can call 881-1311. So it's important to meet residents where they are, to work to bring them along, but also to meet them where they are and to help them understand this is being done for you, not for the company that's providing the technology, not for us to say that Gary has this new feature, but to make your life easier, because at the end of the day, it's about quality of life.
Great. Mayor Davis, again, there's so many definitions of smart cities and smart communities. We're trying to redefine it, but when you think about it, what comes to mind?
Well, I'll give Mayor Freeman-Wilson a break on that because one of my closest friends still carries a flip phone, so in his mind it's safe. When I think about, again, particularly in our context, smart communities, I think about government becoming not the thing that happens to our citizens, but rather the thing that they're now connected to. And how do we best do that beyond service delivery? Most of what we think about as a citizen is that government is responsible for the roads, the bridges, and making sure that I get water. And we see that as infrastructure. But in today's economy, there's a new technology called the Internet of Things. And the question then becomes, how do we deliver services to our citizens in the most efficient and cost-effective manner? That is the foundation for what we perceive in Augusta as how we get to that place of being a smart city. It's taking our citizens, our neighbors, our friends, our church members, and connecting them in a participatory way to the things that are happening in and around them, and giving them the tools to participate in that, whether it's our traffic management and control center, or whether it's cybersecurity, of where we're solving the nation's challenges around cybersecurity. That's part of what is, quote, a smart city, but at the very foundation of all of that is human capital. You can't have a smart city without people who are willing to bend that arc, people who are willing to engage and solve the challenges that, again, are more than just delivering water, which we know is a challenge in still communities like ours or all across America. But it's taking this small device and making it an option to not only allow them to pay their taxes, to get their new tag, pay their water bill. Those are the elements of what makes a smart community.
So, Mayor Caldwell, when you think of Honolulu, people have this vision of, beaches and resorts. Why is the issue of smart cities so important to you and redefining it as the mayor of Honolulu?
Well, thank you for that question. And I also want to just say good afternoon and aloha to everybody. He was mentioned, Clarence mentioned my tie. And, in Honolulu, you wear a tie if you're going to court or you're going to a funeral. And I was a little bit late getting here because I kept tying my tie. It was too long because I don't do it that often. I finally got it a little better. One of the things I just wanted to say about aloha, this morning I was rushing to get a bus to go out this Peachtree Technology Center, and I was a little late, and I ran up to a security guard at the CNN Center saying, where do I find this place? And he told me, before you ask the question, you should say good morning. I went, yeah, you're right. So I said good morning, and then I asked again. But what I wanted to say is, this aloha spirit we talk about in Hawaii exists here in Atlanta. That this security guard, who probably gets grief all day long, told me to say good morning. And I really appreciated that. So that's why I wanted to say aloha to all of you. For me, smart city, I think when I we have a bunch of sister cities in China, and many of them are green cities. We're a green city. Yeah. To me, they don't seem so green. They seem to be built on the version of an American city, a lot of freeways and a lot of concrete. And so what is a smart city? And for me, I think of a smart city as one that is providing services that connect the community, and then government kind of gets out of the way. You're invisible. You're just doing the things to enhance the quality of life and to connect each other. And if we do that, we're doing our job as a mayor. And by the way, I think it's the major function in civilized society today. Great things come out of great cities, and we as mayors are trying to make sure that our communities, whether they be big or small, are places that thrive. And technology is part of that, but in some very simple ways. We just hosted the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Honolulu the first time in over 50 years. John F. Kennedy spoke at the last one we held. But we worked on a city ID card, for example. It would be simple in a way. A lot of people have a driver's license, but a lot of people don't. You know, most of the homeless community, and we have the highest per capita homeless of any city in the country. We don't have as much as LA, but based on our population, we have a lot. How do we get them a city ID? And maybe put information, including uploading money onto that card, so they can just purchase food for themselves. Maybe not alcohol or drugs, but certain limited things. That is being a smart city in a very simple way to help those who really need help the most. And to me, being a smart city is about equity. It's not just helping those who are well off living in our best neighborhoods, it's helping those in all of our neighborhoods. So one other example, we pushed under my administration bike share. You know, many cities have bike share, and we have one called Bicky Bike. It's about a year and a half old now. It's number 6 in the nation in terms of ridership. Huge demand. But most of it is in the Waikiki downtown area, where people who are in these areas are pretty okay. It's not in places like Kalihi, which has a high working class community of Filipino Americans who went there. And so how do we incentivize bike share in that community? They can use it too. And so we're looking at putting an app in place that would actually incentivize the bike share company going there and providing rides for less cost. Simple thing, but then people who can't afford to own a car, pay for parking in Waikiki where they go to work, can actually use a bike to go to and from work very inexpensively. That's an example of being smart in a basic kind of way. But thank you for that question.
Appreciate that, Mayor.
Thanks.
Mayor Grant, I think that when people imagine communities talking about being smart cities, they think of these big global cities or the larger cities in America. You lead a smaller city outside of the District of Columbia, Maryland area, Sea Pleasant. How do you define smart cities and redefining it for your citizens?
Yeah, by simply saying Sea Pleasant. But seriously, and thank you for the question, we believe that smart cities is the new social justice platform that brings about equity and inclusion for all segments of a society. And so that as you go on the journey in the creation of a smart city, citizens must be at the core of everything that you do. So Jeff Bezos, they say he's the richest man in the world, so he may know a little something. He said when he created Amazon, he created a customer-centric company. And so we adopted in Sea Pleasant a citizen-centric government, that everything is about the citizen. It does not start with the technology. My colleague has just indicated it's really about the connectivity of human beings, being able to exchange with one another the politeness, the kindness, the humanity in all that we do. And that the technology is the enabler to help facilitate that connectedness with everyone. So there are 3 areas that we look at when we talk about a smart city. 1 is the connectivity. 2 is data, where we're bringing in data that we can analyze to do descriptive analytics, prescriptive analytics, and then predictive analytics, and then incorporating AI into what we do. And then the 3rd part, which we believe is the most important part, is the shared service hub. You cannot really be a smart city without a shared service hub, where the data that goes in to this system, every member of the society has access to that to be able to make informed decisions for themselves. It's all about engagement, it's all about education, and it's all about empowerment.
All right, so you've kicked us to another level on this conversation. I'm gonna put my cards down, so we may as well just get into it, right?
Sure.
Because as elected officials, honestly, you know that you can talk about that connectivity and the need for the investment in technology, but then you got potholes.
Yep.
You got roads that need to be paved. You need water systems.
Garbage.
You need jobs, garbage. How do you convince your citizens that this investment in technology should be a priority? And I'm just going to throw that open to who, Mayor, you want to start?
You know, I'll be the first to say that, because we probably have some of the most challenging financial issues that we're facing. You use the data that the mayor talked about to convince citizens and, quite frankly, to make the case that this is going to save money. And, you know, so often it's in the long term, but I think more often than not we're finding that it's also in the short term. As an example, there are cities all over the country who have used hardest hit funds to demolish and decommission vacant or abandoned buildings. We were able to use data to determine where to focus that money, because we knew we didn't have money to tear down every building, but we also knew that if we focus the money in the right places, then we would be able to raise property values and preserve property values of other residents so that we wouldn't see the downward slide that we had been seeing. So that's one way that you can use smart technology, because we were able to use a device to count every parcel in the city of Gary so that we could then deploy resources in a smart way.
I'll build on that. In Augusta, we established what we refer to in the mayor's office as a joint collaboration committee to fight blight, that very issue. In cities all across America, we know, based on the data set, that this is where you're most underserved, impoverished, least employed individuals, your chronic absenteeism in school. All of those are factors that when you take the data set and layer on the health information to look at what that says as well, you're better able to address in a holistic fashion. Because in most cities, we generally don't have $15 million to go and tear down all of the houses. Now you've got a problem of grass is going to grow back. What do we do from a redevelopment standpoint? So with this initiative, this collaborative committee, we've taken all of our departments, they're working together in a way that they've never done before. But again, all around the premise of how do we create this smart neighborhood that then gives us a template to further create a smart city that works for all of our citizens to begin addressing the issue of digital inclusion, which in this area that we've targeted, some 250 parcels, right in the gateway of the city, right across the street from the medical district. But you have these challenges, and they've been there. They're chronic. They've been there forever and a day. And so we've taken this approach to begin taking the data set, doing analytics, finding out what's going on from a school system standpoint, because we partner with the schools as well. And we come to find out that there are some 4,000 homes and or students who don't have access to the internet right here in Augusta, Georgia. And you say, well, how can we be a smart city if we don't even have internet access to some of these communities that are right here in the urban core? So taking all of what Mayor Grant said and Mayor Freeman-Wilson has said as well, we've been able to put together a strategic plan of how we're going to address from demolition to cleanup, asbestos abatement, and purpose in the schools, and partnerships with corporate vendors who will allow us to solve the issue of digital inclusion at the same time, as well as identifying solutions to address the school problem.
Mayor Caldwell, again, the investment and choices and making speeches about innovation and investment in technology. How are you talking about that in Honolulu?
I thought I'd give maybe two quick examples. One, road repaving. People had neglected, mayors way before me neglected repaving roads in our city and county, the island of Oahu. Maybe some of the major roads, but not the ones in subdivisions. And I committed to repave those roads. And so we hired someone who actually drove on every city road, about 3,500 lane miles. And by driving and photographing and running it through this analytics, they determined which roads should be repaved first and down the line. It wasn't, I didn't pick them as, hey, this is a Democrat area, we'll pave there first. We'd pave where, because I'm a Democrat, we'd pave where the roads needed to be paved. And we've now undertaken that for 7 years. And in 7 years, we spent over $700 million repaving these roads, over 2,000 lane miles, using that technology. But the other part, potholes remain in some of these roads. And so we did an app where you can take a picture of the pothole and send it in to our city, and we can know by the picture through that I'm not good at tech, but they know where that pothole is.
Yeah.
We've guaranteed that to be filled in 48 hours or we're in trouble. And so our guys go out and fill those potholes. Now, you got to repave the road because potholes keep coming out again. But that's one example. The more recent one is we struggle, like many cities, with short-term vacation rentals. And our Honolulu City Council, with my support, I put in a bill, they modified it, to really regulate this industry where we have probably 15,000 short-term vacation rentals on island Oahu. Wow. And it's driving up the cost of housing because these homes used to be rented for people on the island are now making a lot more renting to visitors. And so they passed a bill, very hard to crack down, but we're now using technology. It's been in place since August 1st, and working with a tech company from Silicon Valley, along with our IT department, we're coming up with a way to really use through advertising and through pictures and through calendars, really coming right down very easily and finding people. Because you can, under this new law, if you advertise on the internet, it's a prima facie case of violation, fine of $1,000 a day. So it took a little bit of while, but the technology now is making a huge difference. Absolutely. And just with the threat, we've seen 3,000 or 4,000 homes come off the advertising, which means they're now available, and you read letters to the editor saying, thank you, City Council Mayor, I'm able to rent a home in this community, which was before being rented to visitors. Another example, too.
Mayor Grant, as you think of this centric view of developing your process of engagement and technology for your citizens, how are you balancing, again, the potholes, the issue with public safety, making sure they understand the investment that you're making?
So I think what's important for those in public life is that the constituency has to believe and trust their leadership. And that means leadership has a responsibility to be responsive to the people that put them in office and gave them their job. For those of us here, we're mayors, and so our constituency said, we want you to lead our city. We trust through our vote that you can accomplish the goals that are set forth. Oftentimes, elected officials sometimes forget why they were put into office. And I'll say that because we get caught up into the day-to-day work that we're doing. Last week, I went to a community meeting, and I got beat up by my residents simply because I had lost a little bit of touch with them because they said, there's a house been neglected, grass needs to be cut. So I put on my uniform with my public works, and I went out there on Saturday and Sunday, and I went out there and I started cutting grass. The reason I'm saying that, not as a brag, but I'm saying that is because I'm the longest serving mayor in my city. You can't get there without having a relationship with your constituency. Somewhere along the path, I began to forget that. Moving forward is important because the reasons why we have been able to make the investments we've been able to make is because of that relationship. I think Mayor Karen Freeman-Wilson started us off with a great example, which is the vacant housing. So even though we're a small community, we had 140 vacant homes in our city. We have 1,600 homes, 140 of them in 2016 were vacant. So then we started doing some analytics and trying to understand what does that mean and how does that impact our constituency. We realized that pulling data down from the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation, looking at the data from our public works, looking at the data from our police department, our residents that were right next to a vacant home was losing 13% in valuation of their property. No homeowner wants to continuously hear that their property value is devaluing. So we had to come up with some public policy to address that. That data helped us to say, we need $1.5 million. I went to the council agreed, and we started buying some of those houses. Yeah. After we bought those houses, we started turning them in to smart homes. We were able to sell that to our residents because by doing that, we're able to increase the property values. So now we went from 140 vacant homes down to 50 in 2 years. Wow. We didn't buy all of them, but it also spurred the investment community to also come in and start buying vacant homes because they saw the government taking a leadership role in doing that as well. So now we've seen the valuation going up by 30%, where the average home at the time was $172,000 at that time. 2 years later, $235,000. And again, we're right outside of Washington, D.C. We believe that we have some opportunities to leverage. The last point, one investor came in, bought a piece of property for $30,000, put a little bit of money into that property, and resold it for $300,000. So we are seeing that utilizing the data, utilizing our ability to engage with our residents, to negotiate with them that this is what we want to do with your tax dollars and be accountable to you, we find that it is more easy for them to agree and support our initiatives.
So let me build on 2 points that Mayor Caldwell and Grant has introduced here, and that is the private companies. And one of the areas that innovation has occurred significantly is an area of transportation and shared vehicles and technology. I went walking today and got scootered by a scooter laying down, and I tripped over it and stuff like that. I'm not shading the transportation companies, but what is happening in your community, and what message or processes are you using to integrate innovation and transportation in your long-range plan? Because we all know if you can't get to your job, then you're not creating prosperity. So we need these tools, but what are we doing with these companies, Mayor Davis?
Well, we're not only partnering with companies, but I think we're very fortunate in Augusta. Since I'm in the great state of Georgia, I think we've got probably the best transportation network in the state, particularly in terms of how we handle roads and bridges. I hear that everywhere I go, yeah. But more importantly, our traffic management and control. Most people, they know Augusta for being the golf capital of the world with the Masters Golf Tournament and how we efficiently move people in and out. But we've gone beyond just during the Masters Golf Tournament in terms of how we move people, and that's partnerships with private sector companies using technology with cameras, with sensing capabilities where lights are concerned. Our EMS, our first responders, we have the ability as people are traveling, our first responders, whether it's our fire trucks and also our ambulances in terms of partnership with them, where when they come to the red lights, they're able to, using the technology available, move in and out through the sensing devices where traffic is concerned. I think it's those types of technologies that allow us to not only move people efficiently around when we have major sporting events, but more importantly, as communities grow, and in our case, as we continue to grow as the second largest city in the state, it allows us to begin building that road infrastructure that you have to have, but knowing more importantly, as people are moving to different parts of our city, how we're able to leverage that using the data in terms of population, travel times, et cetera. We're able to do that because of that traffic management and control capability through our private sector partners who are helping us to leverage that technology.
Anybody want to add anything before I move on?
You know, I would just add, Clarence, you always think about the introduction of Uber, the introduction of Lyft, Lime, other scooter companies, the introduction of bike shares as a positive thing. I think what we all try to ensure is that it is coordinated so that when you're walking down the street and you're a experienced class member, like you almost are, right? That you're not tripping over it with some other type of aided walking device, that when you are engaging in the use of bike shares, that there are bike lanes and that there are features in the city that are conducive to introducing that technology so that we're all getting, you know, what we need from those companies, and that it really is a partnership, and that residents don't feel that it's an infringement.
I'll mention one more thing around the ride-sharing conversation. In many cities like ours, I'm sure these mayors have experienced it as well, our transit systems operate with defined times, unlike our ride-share capability. And so we've had conversations from our transit agency with some of our partners, with Uber in particular. Most recently had a conversation with them about being that last mile or that next mile. So when I've got healthcare workers who are working the late shift and our transit system is stopped, through partnerships or an MOU, we will have the capability to provide them with that last mile home as if they were riding the bus, even though the bus is stopped. Those are technologies that are available to us through those private sector partnerships that I think become really phenomenal in terms of transforming a community where you've got underserved individuals who don't have their privately owned vehicle, but who need transportation just as well as anyone else.
I wanted
Quick
to
response.
I thought something that Mayor Freeman-Wilson mentioned I think is really important here is the public-private partnership. Is technology getting ahead of infrastructure? Like you talk about, whether it's a scooter you tripped over. For me, most recently, I really pushed car share. And so we had this big announcement, we're going to dedicate hundreds of parking stalls for car share. And the community rose up, you're taking away parking stalls for us to park in, because they're not ready for car share. So there's a little bit of, as you use technology, because it's forward thinking, you're a smart city, you're looking to the future, and it has to happen. You can't get so far ahead of what the community is willing to accept, because it can kill the very thing you support. On Lime Scooter, they came into Honolulu, Wild Wild West, really bad. Scooters on the beach, in the Alawai Canal, everywhere, people tripping. And I had our police department pick every single one of them up. Over 1,000 of them were in the basement of the Honolulu Police Department headquarters. They didn't come back. And no one's come back since. I'm saying, you got to come back and work with us. And I put in a micro-mobility bill where we try to treat everyone equally, but also make sure that somehow they get returned to certain areas and are not laid just wherever people want to leave them. But that's the technology getting ahead a little bit. And as mayors, we want to embrace it, but we also want to make sure it's going to be accepted by our community. And there's a balance there. I don't have the answer other than we need to think about it and be ready.
So you talk about that balance, and I want to make sure we get to this word equity,
Yes.
inclusion. I'll give a shout out to your work, Mayor Caldwell, in terms of climate. You're doing bold things. Mayor Davis has done amazing things in the cyber area, being the most progressive city in America in regards to working in those areas. But I got to push us the last few minutes we have here, because I do think in the States, in America, especially people of color, often get left behind as it relates to technology engagement. What steps are you taking, any of you are taking, to make sure that as we develop our communities, that we develop them for all and that they are not forgotten and left in 5G, 3G, all these technologies? Mayor Grant.
I'll start that off. So when we're talking about bringing IoTs into the community, and you're dealing with all of these major corporations, Siemens, Johnson Controls, IBM, Google, all of them that have some type of product that they want to put into these cities, most times they're importing the talent in, or the workers into the community to do the installations, to do the troubleshooting, et cetera, et cetera. We knew that that would probably be a problem for us. So what we did is we did a press conference last year with our community college and our Chamber of Commerce, where we asked our community college to create a curriculum that will give our people an opportunity to get a certification in the smart city world. And so our first class will start October the 8th, if I'm not mistaken, where we're allowing residents in the city to take this class so that when these companies come in, they will find qualified workers to be able to do the installations, to do the repairs, to do the troubleshooting, et cetera. That's part of our equity and inclusion in making certain that no one is left behind. As a result of that, now George Washington University now wants to come in and talk with us to create a curriculum as well, and we're going to help them to design this curriculum for the benefit of our residents in the city of Seat Pleasant. And so those are just a couple of examples that we're doing to ensure that none of the people in our community are left behind as we go through this digital transformation.
All right, you jump in. We've got a few minutes.
Yeah, so real quick, it's a short story. There's a company called Ignite. They're here today, George and Riyadh, and you should seek them out. But they introduced me when I was in Singapore and then at the U.S. Conference of Mayors with Singapore Technologies. They do these kiosks for lighting and other things, and you can plug in and charge your vehicle. But so we did this in Honolulu. We did it in Waikiki, which is all tourists, and we did it in the Chinatown community, which is a more rough and tumble neighborhood. And the kiosk, you could scroll through, you could hit 911 and actually get an officer on the screen. They can see you, can talk to each other. And you can do all kinds of other things, find out where to eat, government services, what's happening in the neighborhood. And this has been in place since June, and we get reports every month. And here's where people of color. And Hawaii is much color, it's all blends of brown for the most part. But what we found is these kiosks were most used between 11 in the evening and 3 in the morning. And they were being used by people who were looking for social services because they needed help or a place to stay just for one night. Now, I would have never dreamt. I thought this was going to be a cool thing in Chinatown to find where you go for the best dim sum. And in Waikiki, who's do kahanamoku? And instead, it's helping people connect with services provided by government and by not-for-profits who are the most in need of services. That's technology, an unexpected thing that came out of this. We're going to put more of them around and try to help our people when they need help the most. Short story on that.
Mayor Davis.
At Augusta, because cyber is that new frontier, in 2016, in conversations and partnership with Governor Deal at the time, the Department of Education, we established 3rd through 12 Cyber Pathways curriculum. It was adopted as an official curriculum pathway for our state schools, in particular in Richmond and Columbia counties, because that's where the Cyber Command Center of Excellence is at Fort Gordon. And so we started in 2016. The first cohort of students, 3rd through 12th grade, began in 2017. So we are in our 3rd year now. That was a wave that we saw in partnership with the school system, City of Augusta, Governor Deal again, and Department of Education here in the state of Georgia, a way to begin growing that community. As Mayor Grant said, so many times there are transplants into the city, but in this instance, we're going to be growing that talent.
Yes.
They're going to be able to work in that cybersecurity space, not just from a DOD or military perspective, but in the fintech community, healthcare, health tech, and the financial services, all of those arenas, because we're growing that talent pipeline in our schools, 3rd through 12th grade, from cradle to college to career.
Similarly, in Gary, we have created opportunities for our young people to experience new things. And it's in the summer, whether it's coding, whether it is a simulation of working on a plane or working in a plane. It's something that you open the horizon to. As a kid, I loved day camp. And so, you know, I loved it because you played sports, you did other things, arts and crafts, things like that. But now we're introducing technology exposure to our young folks so that they will begin to think about that as they look to their career choices.
So, Mayor Freeman-Wilson, I'm going to lob you an easy ball here because as president of National League of Cities this year, one of the things you've talked about is loving your city. And when you talk about technology and connectivity and inclusion and equity, how does that make a person love their city if they don't have it or if they do have it? Talk to us about loving your city.
Well, that is our theme for this year, Love Your City. And we would invite you to go to mycity.love to look at ways that you can love your city, town, or village. And the best way to demonstrate as an elected official, not only our love for our city, but our love for our citizens in our communities is to provide something that enhances their quality of life. And what better way to do that than with technology?
Right. Let's give this panel a hand, please. You know, as we close the panel, let me just say that you can create all types of tools, you can create all types of programs, but if they're not inclusive, they're not accessible, they're not funded, and they're not used by the citizens that our leaders have developed, then they have not been able to improve the lives of the citizens that live in towns, cities, and villages in America. The most important thing, though, as leaders of cities in America and leading them, is creating a place called home. And if you don't have technology access to that, if you don't have a job, if you don't have the way to create real opportunities within those communities, you wouldn't consider that home. So all of these leaders here are creating a place that their citizens will feel connected and call their communities home. So thank you all very much, and thank you all for your time. Have a good day.
Hardie, great. I love